Technology, diversity, wine, the redwoods, and everything in between. Welcome to the Northern California Bay Area, and one show takes you inside the real estate that makes it all happen. This is By the Bay.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of By the Bay. I'm your host, Dan Anchetta, and I wanted to thank you for watching or listening to the podcast and remind you to please like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you find us. And a 5-star rating is awesome. It helps people find the podcast, and I would be very grateful if you would do that. And today I have a really fun episode planned with my production partner and amazing loan officer, Aliya Hanson, who is here. Aliya and I go way, way back. We tell a funny story where, Aliya is my wife's best friend, and she's the fairy godmother to our children and our neighbor, and works in the business, and so we're pretty darn close. And we've been trying to have you on the show for a while because I think it's kind of cool to talk from a loan officer perspective about like what's happening in real estate in the Bay Area, and you cover actually a larger swath of the Bay Area than I do. I kind of centralize in this area and other parts of the state, but you've got like the ringing the Bay. So tell everyone who you are and kind of give a little bit of context for the listeners about your background.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me. I have been in the industry now about 3 years. Actually, kind of a funny story how Dan recruited me. I came from a luxury customer service background, mainly selling wine country weddings for first a 5-star resort and then to a catering company in the Bay Area. And I stopped doing that during the pandemic when events were shutting down. And as Dan mentioned, we are neighbors. So I was walking a lot at like 7 a.m. because I had nothing else to do.
That's right.
And Dan would have to drive by my house to get to work.
Yeah, everything was shut down, but I was still coming to the office because we had small, our middle daughter was small. And so Bab, our dog, and I would get in the car and drive to the office, and it was just me and him. And so I'd see you walking, and I think I pulled over one day and I was like, "What are you doing today?"
Walking, painting the interior of our house.
That's right. You painted the whole house.
I painted our whole house. Yep. And you kept being like, just come shadow me. Come sit in the office. We'll have lunch.
Just come check it out.
We were already potted together because Meg and I were spending all of our time
early
together.
Days pandemic. Yeah. It's like a few months in, we're like locked down, and we're like, hey, we'll just pod together, and that way, because you could walk to the house and see the kids and come hang out. And so it was like, no additional health risks here, so come hang out and see what I do.
Yeah, so...
But you have a background in real estate because your family's involved in real estate, so it wasn't like you were brand new to understanding what it took to do a transaction.
Yeah, my mom's been a realtor since well before I was born. My sister is a realtor in Klamath Falls, Oregon. My dad's a real estate attorney, so this was not new to me, the whole world of real estate. And so it was a really natural transition. I think I came and sat in your office for like 3 days, and then I just never left.
Yeah, like literally. I had to officially hire you at a certain point and like do the background check and all the other stuff because we work for a bank. And then you were just kind of always here. And we just...
Can't kick me now.
The cool thing is that you learned so much so fast in that time period. You saw so many transactions, so many different like types of deals, different types of borrowers, different types of relationships, and your accelerated path was pretty cool, right?
It was honestly such a gift to come in at that time, and I think like a few months in, I moved into. I was sitting in my own office and taking my own calls, and then. It was just learning so much from other loan officers, and I moved into your office.
Right, bought a small desk that fit in the corner.
And just like, it was such an accelerated process. I feel like in my first year, I saw as many deals as most loan officers see in their first like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's totally true. And you were, I totally handed stuff over to you and was like, hey, figure it out. Ask me questions. You're listening to all the conversations, and you learned all the different types of files and different like kind of tricks that we use and different ways that we position our borrowers and how those conversations sound with borrowers and real estate partners and so on. And so like your business now, because you moved out of the office and you're running your own desk, and we have an assistant that we share now. So you've kind of went from being the assistant to having an assistant, and now you're teaching Colby how to do things. And shout out Colby, who's in the office doing work while we're doing this.
Absolutely.
So how has that evolution gone for you? And like, how does it feel to go from like brand new, learning a ton, and now you're like someone else's mentor, right?
Yeah, it's been cool. I think, like I told you when we decided to partner up on things and I was assisting you, I had never been someone's assistant before. So like that was its own learning curve in itself for me, of like learning how to do this role and also learning how to support someone. And it's also made it great to bring on an assistant and teach them into this role. I was actually just having this conversation with Colby yesterday, like you and I can tell him the right thing, but him learning it himself, he's going to remember the right thing.
He's got to make some mistakes.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
People have to mess up and fall on their face a few times, and they're like, I don't ever want to feel that way again.
Yeah, and I remember you doing that with me. Like you knew the answer,
Totally.
but you let me spin my wheels for like 6 hours and get to the answer. And like those are the ones that I remember the most, and like am so grateful for that experience because it made me a better loan officer in the end.
And it's cool when you're in that position as like the mentor, where you can go like, I could just tell you the answer. I mean, I know the answer, but it's better for me to like drop some breadcrumbs as some hints and then let you find the path, because we do also want you to create your own unique style, right? Like, and everyone's a little bit different, and you're not exactly like me. You do a lot of stuff that I do, but you have your own unique perspective and your own life experience that leads you to be like how you are with your clients and your partners. So kind of talk about how you like have created your business, because I think that, you know, listener is a mix of people who are trying to buy houses and then also real estate professionals. And I think that you've done such an exceptional job at learning from all these different people and then creating your own style that then caters to your demographic of borrowers and clients that you kind of tend to gravitate towards. And then they refer you other people. Then it kind of is this growing web of people that are all, I mean, obviously a range of different people, but similar in certain ways, right? So kind of how have you gone about intentionally creating your business?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, really similar to how I created my career in the wedding industry. You know, you start at the bottom and you work your way up and you learn a lot along the way. And you don't only learn a lot about what you do, but the type of client that you work with and who meshes well. And in the wedding industry, I used to tell people all the time, there's so much talent in this industry. Like, people are really good at their job, but you're going to be working with this person for the next year, 18 months or so. So enjoy them. And that's how I've really created my sphere, is like my first intake call is probably a lot longer than a lot of loan officers. I like to get to know the people, make sure we're the right fit.
Right.
And, you know, I love the education part of it.
Right.
Like,
you've also said like, I'm not for everyone. Like I've heard you say that. And that's great self-awareness to know, like you might have this long intake call and at the end of it go, I'm probably never going to talk to that person again. We just didn't jive. And that's okay. Like there's lots of great people out there that they should work with someone that makes them feel good and educates them and like communicates with them in the way that they need. Right. So, so you've done this before in your prior career. How is it similar or different, like in your experience as you're growing now? Because you've really been on an accelerated path, right? So like you're learning by doing, and you're taking it all on very, very quickly. How has that experience been thus far?
it's been great. I mean, I'm very much a believer of we're in the relationship business and we happen to do loans. Like, that's what we do. We're making relationships here and we're making connections. It's really cool when I get people who like how I do things and want to learn the way I like to teach, because I wish I had that when I bought my first home. Like, I wish I had the guidance into, I could have invested into something very different way earlier than I did before you were in the industry, was when I started exploring that. And so I love being an expert in my craft and being able to arm people with the tools that they have to make an educated decision. Like, that's my biggest thing. Like, you can call anyone and they'll quote you a rate and give you a max purchase price. And that's what a lot of people do. But I like to teach people about it. I want people to know, like, here are all your options, because that's like what my family did.
Right.
They kind of just built their way through real estate, and it's been really cool to watch. And it's a big risky thing to do sometimes, but like I've seen it pay off in the end, and it's really cool. And so I love to arm people with that.
All right. So firsthand, right? And you can get as personal as you care to, but firsthand how it is to have wealth being generated through investing in real estate, making hard decisions to make that a priority, and going about like a logical process to say, like, I could spend money on lots of things. My choice is to do this. And the reason is it's going to appreciate over time. It's a cash flow generator, all these other things. So being that you have that in your background, it seems like maybe that's an opportunity for you to use a personal experience to educate borrowers with, like, through, not like I read this in a book somewhere, or I know someone who did this, but like, this is how your part of your family has done. I mean, and you can even tell, like, about Julia and her exploits up in Klamath and what she's doing up there. Like, it's really fascinating. There's so many different ways to make money in real estate. And it seems like your family's done a lot of them, right?
Yeah. So when my dad immigrated here when he was 4 years old, they moved to a chicken ranch in Pengrove, and my dad is now a real estate attorney. At the beginning of his career, he subdivided that lot into 5 different parcels and built our family home, which we grew up in. Actually, before that, he built a little 2-3 bedroom home where him and my mom brought my sister home, and then they built our big family home. And then when my now husband and I were looking at starting to save for our first property, my parents let us build a granny unit on that property. So we were able to live under market and live on our family property, which was so cool. At that time they had moved. So had tenants in there, but one of their homes, actually the one we built the granny unit to, that tenant has been there since I was in 3rd grade.
Unbelievable.
He moved in when he was a college student at Sonoma State.
That's wild. So your parents had acquired like a larger piece of land in Pengrove, right? And then subdividing means you took the big piece and you cut it up into smaller pieces, and then sold some of them, developed some of them, and like generated wealth through real estate, taking one asset and turning it into multiple like streams. And now they have kind of cash flow revenue being generated from the residents that they either have acquired or built out there that people pay rent on, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So like, there's one example. There's other examples of like how you've seen firsthand people can build wealth.
Yes.
Right. Tell us another story about that.
Yeah. So I had a call with a first-time buyer today. It was our second level education call where he called me last week and he decided, I want to buy a multi-unit property. And that's so exciting to me.
Right.
Like, there's so many cool products to do that.
Yeah. People house hacking and doing some interesting things. So what was he targeting?
So we're looking at a 2 to 4 unit property in Sonoma or Marin County. And with what we're looking at, with the income that's going to generate from units 2 through 4, his mortgage payment is probably going to be slightly higher than his current rent. And he's building wealth. And it was funny, he said, this is a big jump to take out a loan for $700,000-$800,000. And I said, yeah, it is. It's riskier than putting your cash in a high yield savings account, but the reward can be better at the end. And he was like, I love this. I am choosing to do this. This is how I'm choosing to make money and invest. And I was like, cool, I'm on board. Let's do it.
Yeah. It's one of those cool things, like in hindsight, obviously we know how the story plays out, and that gives us some confidence to be able to go back. If I were to do something differently, we had opportunities, Meg and I had opportunities that we could have bought a 3 or 4 unit property with an FHA loan and put down 3.5% on $600,000, and that property today is worth $2 million, right? Like, it totally could have done that. There was, I remember seeing those types of opportunities. We just didn't know that was really possible. So that's so cool and exciting that like that message is getting out there, that young people, I have a borrower right now, she's like 22, she lives in the Central Valley in the Fresno, Madera area. And she's like, I want to buy a house, but I also want to have a house that has income generator. So I want a duplex or a triplex. And she's a W-2 employee. She makes good money, but it's not like she's making $500,000, $600,000 a year. She's not crazy rich, right? She's not wealthy. She's starting that process, but she understands the power of other people's money investing in your asset, like creating an opportunity for someone to be a renter. And she's like, I want to buy this house. I'm going to convert this to be a granny unit. I'm like, do all these other things. And I'm like, good, do it. Like, you're 22. What's the worst that can happen?
That's the time.
Right? Like, what's the worst that can happen?
We play worst case scenario all the time in my house.
So she's going to do it, and she's out shopping right now. And I'm like, good. Like, that is so awesome that like, she's thinking about. I wish I would have. I did a lot of things right, like in my 20s and stuff. One thing like, if I can go back in time, I would have been a little bit more aggressive and taken more risks in this regard, because what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Right? The project doesn't work. You have to rework it. You have to like subsidize the rent. I don't know. Like worst case, you get foreclosed on. Like, okay.
That's
like, that would stink, but hey, it happens. But you took the risk and you did it. And the likelihood that happens is a lot less than it working out pretty well for you or even great for you. Right? Anyway.
Yeah, we played that game a lot when we were buying our home in West Petaluma. My husband was like, you know, I grew up in the real estate family. I'm the one that has the confidence and the experience here. And he was so nervous to take that jump. And I was like, okay, worst case scenario here. We have to sell a property that's at the time worth $750,000 in West Petaluma and move into a 1-bedroom apartment.
Not a bad scenario.
Yeah, like we're in the same situation now, being in a 2-bedroom apartment than we would be then, but we would have an asset. Like, so what?
And you could take the shot and see what happens.
Yeah. So I think that's been really fun. Like the other thing that has been really fun for me is the move-up buyer being like, do you know that you could rent out your exiting residence and that could cash flow? Do you want to be a real estate investor? Do you want to be an immediate landlord? Because that's a really cool thing. Now they have the equity to move into the next property. And it's just like, they hadn't even thought that that was an option for them. And it's like, okay, well, if you want to, I'll hold your hand and walk you through that.
100%. And I think that's going to be more prevalent, especially as people who might have bought a few years ago, they have these crazy low interest rates and their taxes are low. And like, it makes a lot of sense if you have the desire or skill set to be a landlord and manage a property. And if not, be smart enough to farm that out to someone else who can manage it for you and just, you know, collect mailbox money. That's not a bad situation. That idea of kind of goes back to the house hacking thing, which is house hacking is a general term for doing things in a creative way to build wealth in real estate, right? So, you know, I've seen people buy that single family residence, they live in it for a little while, they build up some equity. Meanwhile, they're still saving. They might rent out a couple of bedrooms in there depending on their life. Like they're like doing interesting things, and they parlay that into the next property, and they kind of do a series of events where they're buying properties, living in some, investing in others, doing some things that are creative. Multi-unit, owner-occupied properties is a great idea. Something with a granny unit, something with an ADU, that sort of thing. I think that's a really exciting path for people. I think you can do it anywhere in the country. And I really feel like it's just a matter of finding a loan officer and a realtor that can like help you understand what that process looks like and like give you the confidence to go like, this is how it will work. This is the rent that you can expect. I had a borrower recently who bought the single family with the accessory dwelling unit and moved into the ADU and rented out the big house. And they're like, I don't need all this space right now. There will be a time that I move into the big house and rent out the ADU. But for now, why wouldn't I collect $4,000 in rent from the big house?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need that space. I need the studio. Like so smart. So I think like that's a big differentiator that you're bringing to the market is like that knowledge and expertise to say, there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. Here are some things I've personally done. Here are some things my family has done. Here are some things I've seen done. And like, let's talk about how that could apply to you.
Yeah. And that's the biggest departure between this industry and my last industry. My last industry was like it was luxury customer service and it was uber luxury. And so the rule there was always friendly, but not familiar. But in this industry, people want to know your history.
100%.
They want to know what you've done. They want to know what you've seen.
Yep.
And that's how you draw your experience, especially like this is a big scary thing you're doing. It's one of the biggest investments, and you're going to do this once, twice, maybe 3 times in your life. And we do it 3 times a week.
Right.
And so,
but it's cool because like you can go and say from personal experience, I know the kitchen isn't what you want it to be. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But here's my experience of what we've done.
Yes.
And you can do that too.
Yes.
Right. And like that, like instead of, I think there's a difference between talking hypotheticals and saying, here's my anecdotal evidence of why I know that you can do this, and I can help you with those resources. I can connect you with my tile guy. I can give you all these people. Love our tile guy. You can connect with all these people and help you succeed because I did it and so can you. Right?
Yes.
So it is interesting. So familiar, what was the thing?
Friendly but not familiar.
Friendly but not familiar. And that's not what we do.
No.
Like we're connecting with our people.
Yes.
Right? We're like Instagram friends.
Yes, we are.
we are cards on your birthday people.
Yes.
Right? That is like that connectivity that we're looking for.
I had one borrower who was making an offer around the corner, and she was like, from where I live, and she was like, I don't know, it's like so dated. And I was like, well, stop by after you go to the house tour. I'm literally a block away, and my kitchen was purple when I bought my house. Like, we've done some work.
Yeah, come check it out.
Yeah,
similar like when we live up the street. It's like we just did a full renovation on our house that was built in the '60s. Like, come by, check it out. We'll show you what it looks like. Here's what the potential is. What do you think? So your customers now, I mean, you do a lot of Sonoma County, you're doing Marin, you're San Francisco, you're East Bay, you're kind of all over the place. What's the general attitude right now for your first-time buyers?
I think there's a group of them that are excited about the opportunity, about the products we have right now that can help them with the affordability and all the things that come in this side of the market. I think that there is a group of them that have been, shopping for a year, 18 months, that are kicking themselves for not buying then. But what are you going to do? So we're, plugging ahead and getting them into something, hopefully, within the next quarter or so. And then I have had a few that are just deciding to wait. I have one couple right now who they don't want to buy the starter home. They want the forever home, and they want to save to get there.
Straight to the forever home.
Straight to the forever home.
That's an interesting strategy. I mean, I've seen it work, but also you have to be very patient, and you're going to have to just kind of deal with the ebbs and flows of the market, and you might not be able to time it perfectly. And in general, it's hard to time the market.
So hard. It's like my advice has been, if it feels good, like if we can afford this monthly payment and it feels fine for us, let's jump. Like, go for it. There's nothing stopping you. Again, worst case scenario. It doesn't feel right. You either move out and rent it out, or you sell the home. Like, those are the things that happen. But if this feels manageable today, then let's do it.
I think there's also like, make an offer where you're comfortable. You might not win, but maybe you do. Like if the house is only worth $800,000 to you, write it. If it's worth 1.6 to somebody else of the same house, let them write that.
Fine.
Like, there's no problem. Like, just write what you think it's worth to you, what you're comfortable with in terms of total cash out of pocket and monthly payment. And if you win it, that's great. And if you don't, okay.
And I think that we've personally done that of like, this is what this home is worth to us, so let's write the offer. And in that situation, when we didn't get the house, we felt fine to walk away. Someone else was willing to pay well over what we were willing to pay.
Sure.
Fine.
Right.
Like, we didn't win that deal. It wasn't like, that wasn't the right spot for us because it didn't work for us.
The only transactions I've ever regret, like we've made offers on stuff, is where we lose by like $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000.
Yes.
And I'm like, it was worth it that to me. And I had to have that, like, I had to have that experience to not get the property, to come to the conclusions, like, let's not try to save $10, right? Like, let's offer the number that it's actually worth it to. And like, the exercise that we would do is like, Okay, is it worth it to you at this price with this payment? Yes. Okay, how about this price that's $25,000 more with this payment? Still yes. How about here? It's like, no. Once we hit, this is for whatever reason, this threshold, once we cross this number, it's not worth it to me because I have alternatives that I could do with the money. I could, do other things. And it's like, okay, well then there's our number. Now we know, let's go right below that and offer that. Now, if that means that we offered way above everybody else, okay, but this is what the house is worth to us. And most likely it's going to be very similar to what someone else is worth to someone else. It's very rare that you're offering 600 and everyone else is offering 300. Like that doesn't happen that often. You're going to be really within a certain range, but people need to make offers that they're comfortable with, and like having the tools, again, speaking to that, how you've been through this, you've done that before, as have I, where we can talk to the clients and say, here's our experience. Here's how it's worked for me. And let me show you side by side that progression of prices and payments so that you can find out where that sweet spot is for you and then offer there.
Yeah, because
Right.
we've both kicked ourselves before
Totally.
over 10 grand. And, looking back, we're like, what were we thinking?
I know. I still
The worst.
Yeah, but it's a good experience. You learn from it, and I think it's it made me a better loan officer, better loan professional to be able to take those experiences and say, hey, I bought with an FHA loan. I refinanced. I've remodeled. I've taken cash out. I've used the equity from one house to buy another. I've totally renovated another house. I've done all these. Like the one thing I haven't done is sell a house.
Yeah.
Right? I've never sold a house.
Because the rule is buy and hold.
Buy and hold. Right. So where do you think, kind of wrapping up, like where do you think this market is going? Do you have any insight into what the temperature is with your buyers and where they're thinking things are going? And how are you kind of preparing them for what you think happens next?
I think it's getting busier. Like I was on the phone with one of my realtor partners this morning, and we have a lot more inventory coming. And people have kind of been pent up inventory because it's been raining. It's been hard to get inspections out there.
Sure. It's been super rainy, so people have just been waiting for sunny days to take pictures.
But it's not enough inventory to influx what we need for
absorb the demand.
Yeah, to go back to 2019 when the market was super level.
Right.
So we're super hot market again. It dipped there for maybe a second, and now it's just back stronger than ever. My concern for the people that I have shopping right now is prices are going to continue to go up. And that's something we have to address when we get there. But yeah, I think that everyone that we have out there shopping right now is kind of ready to pounce because they see how competitive it is right now.
Yeah, I think the last few offers that we've had go out, we had one offer that only had 3, us plus 2 other competitors. We had one that was just us and one other. That was cool. Those are on the low side, obviously. And then we had one recently that had 26 offers.
Yes.
It's my goodness, we're back to that.
Everything that I've had in Petaluma has been 5 to 10 offers.
Right.
But in the East Bay, it's 2. I work a lot in the East Bay. 2 of my main realtor partners are there. And I just did one where we went in almost $500K over asking, and we were not near the top.
That's wild.
It's so wild out there right now.
Oh, $500,000.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, Bay Area.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it just speaks to the demand for housing, the lack of inventory, needing more construction to happen, creative things, creating other opportunities to absorb some of the housing demand, like building accessory dwelling units and kind of maximizing properties so that you can absorb the kind of total number of people who are looking for residences and find alternatives for them. But bottom line is people want to be here. Right,
Yeah.
it's a highly
It's great
desirable
to be
place
here.
to place to live and work and raise families and whatever else. And it's just the reality that it's expensive and it's going to cost some money. But having that strategy behind you to say, here's how you can make this more affordable. Here's the plan to long term make this make sense for your finances, but also thinking about your personal finances, what life changes are coming in your life.
We have those conversations
Here's
all the
where
time.
you are today. That's fine. This is a 30-year commitment. What does your family mix look like 5 years from now? Are both people still working? Is one person not? Is somebody retiring? Is somebody becoming a stay-at-home parent? Like, what's happening in your life looking forward, and how does this become affordable then? So, like, I think that's another thing that makes sense. I'm leading you to this, but I know that you have that conversation all the time. I think it's a different approach that most people don't get when they're looking to buy a house, that you're not trying to convince them not to, but you're kind of bringing up to them, like, here's all the things that you need to think about. This is not just get pre-approved by a house. We have to think just overall, like, globally, long-term, how does this decision impact everything else in your life? Right? Again, because you have that experience, because you've been there and you've done it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a conversation. It's funny. I tend to have a lot of those buyers who are young and just getting married and thinking about starting a family. And that's a lot of my clients. And so we have those conversations often of, like, you know, okay, we want to start a family in 2 to 3 years. Great. We're going to pre-approve you on both incomes right now, but will one of your incomes fluctuate? Let's look at what debt to income ratio that is now, knowing that there'll probably be raises and, you know, job changes and all that. But like, let's look at how that's going to feel for you when you get to that point, so you don't get there and you're like, oh no, what now? Well,
I agreed. And it's not like saying, hey, we're trying to discourage you from doing things. It's more so like, I want to make sure that you have options then. I don't want you to be in a position where you're like, one of us really wants to stay home with our young family, but we can't. Like, we can't afford it. Like, that's not a place I want to put people. I want to put them in a place where they have the luxury of having the option to make a choice, right? Instead of not having a choice and just saying, well, I can't do, there's no other way besides this, right?
Yeah.
I think just like having that conversation is a huge deal when it comes to going from being a person who can make you a loan to being an advisor who's really looking out for the long-term, you know, viability of their clients and their success in the future. Right?
One of the questions I always ask is, okay, here's what we can approve you for. What feels comfortable, though? What are you paying in rent right now? And how much more are we willing to go over that? Because there's a big difference in what feels good and what we can approve you for. Like, those numbers are very different numbers. So, and a lot of times if it's two co-borrowers, they look at each other and say, I don't know. We haven't had that conversation. It's like,
we don't have a budget. We don't know. Right.
Let's start that so that, you know, in 3, 4, 6 weeks, whenever we're making our offer, you guys are making an educated, sound decision for not only today, but into the future.
But you're able to facilitate that conversation with your experience to be able to say, hey, you don't have to have the answers right now. I just want to bring up these ideas and topics for you so that you can go home, have a conversation about it. We can collect our thoughts, and then I can position you in a way to show you what that means in terms of your buying power and monthly payment and so on. So
that's the game.
What else should people know about the market, and what else is happening with Bay Area real estate?
I think just, you know, being prepared and being educated on your options. If, like, you came into the market thinking you're making that, like, standard family home purchase and that hasn't netted out, okay, like, how can we adjust that? Like, have those conversations. I think just having just a broader range of what you're looking at is always nice. And maybe you come back to that original decision of, we're going to do that 20% down single family home, like your, you know, standard vanilla thing. But if we've been looking for that and it's just not feeling right, like, there's so many other options and people should know about them and know how to make those moves. And, you know, I think the biggest thing that we do is just really prepare our buyers so when they're out there shopping, they don't have to worry about, like, what's, you know, back in their loan here. Oh, did I get that piece of paper? Like, we're going to let you know, like, okay, you're fully pre-approved. Go do the shopping. Like, this is the fun part. Go out there and see what you want to see. But yeah, it's just so competitive right now. So it's so important to have that all done on the back end.
Being prepared, having the right team behind you to position you, to make sure that you're not missing opportunities, and then being able to go fast.
Yeah,
right?
Move fast.
Cool.
You like to move fast.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm notoriously trying to push things to try to make it go just a day faster. Sometimes it makes a big difference.
It sure does.
Anyway, I just want to say do a fantastic job. I'm really super proud of you for see how your career's really taken off. And I appreciate being on the podcast. We've been trying to get you on for a while, but you're so busy helping all these people buy houses.
It's really tough.
And I just think that you do a really fantastic job. So wanted to share that information and to have people understand that not all loan officers are created equal, that you should have an amazing experience with your team, and to find someone who's really going to advocate for you, educate you, and put you in a position to be successful in the long term. So thanks for being on the show. Thanks for being awesome and for taking care of your buyers and doing such a good job.
Thanks for having me and doing all the teaches to get me here.
Good to see you.
You too.
Stay up to date with Bay Area real estate. Hit subscribe now if you haven't already. Did you enjoy this episode? We love reviews in the Apple Podcasts app. We'll read yours on the show. This is By the Bay.
London Ear Media.
She'll look first.
Who looked first?
Aliya.
Good.
What?
I have this terrible habit at the end of